Okay, welcome back to David's Rebel Coding Podcast. So today, what we're going to do is uh, we're going to pretend that we just got a job at a company and it's our first day on the job. And let's say we've been assigned the client to help extend the application for the pet clinic application that the company's been working on. And what they want to do is they want to add a fresh new component to the application, and that is something to manage staff. Uh, so you think, oh, well, I'm going to need a database, and then I'm going to need to figure out like what server side application programming language because I can't connect directly to a database if I'm just using JavaScript, can I? So, so things get kind of complicated. And I know that I could just install MySQL and quickly, my first gut instinct would be to just like quickly design a table, maybe spin up a Node.js instance, I think. It's the simplest I can think of. And then just like connect to the database and then make some form in Node. And then pretty soon I'm just like locked into building a Node application. But what if we did something a little bit differently? We used an API to create our backend database. So let's say we discovered this CDN from genapi that could just make an API for us magically. So we could just import it by using import genapi from this URL. So it's coming directly from the company's website. And uh, and then we can just basically create our database. So to do that, we first need to instantiate the object. So I'm going to go ahead and instantiate a genapi object. And then I'm going to use my email to have the company generate an application programming interface key for me. So use a valid email because there's some benefits to doing that. And we'll get back this key result set, which will give us our API key. So for example, if I do a console log key result set, we should be able to see in our browser the keys that the company's assigned to us. And those don't change. So if I just refresh, we'll get welcome back, user key. You've got a public and an admin key. So you could copy the admin key here and then, or you could just assign it directly. So for example, you could just say API, the API key is going to equal the key result set dot not the actual key, but what did it say? It was called admin API key. So I'll copy that part. And then, so I assign the key, or I use it in the constructor, the actual key, copy and paste it, first argument in the constructor, and then the API key is assigned. So just the same thing that we did in our main.js on the pet application we've been working on. We just paste the key straight in to the constructor when we create the object. And then what we could do is, if we go back to blank, we've got this key assigned. So now we can do administration tasks like create tables. And it should be fairly simple to create a table. So what we want to do is keep track of our staff. So it's like we want to maybe develop some scheduling application or something like that. So what I might do is like call the create table method. So that's just going to take a table name and then uh, the JSON format for that table name. Now you can specify your own primary keys, but if you don't set the primary key, it's going to default to ID. And it's probably just easier just to use ID because there's a lot of reasons for that. Standardization across the application. You can do more automation if you standardize. So let's the result set come back from the database. If we await, and we call the create table method. Now let's create a staff table, like table staff, and then let's give it a JSON element. So we'll have to create this. Default, the next argument in this would be the primary key. So you could make it like staff, make it like staff ID or something like that if you wanted to. But if I leave it blank, it's just going to default to ID. Now we have to define what our table staff will look like. So all you do is just write out some simple JSON. So I want the ID to be uh, like the UID, which is like a GUID from the database. And then I might do like last name would be and then first name be like John, and then I might have the phone number. Oh, and then I might have like order, and then I could develop like scheduling module around that later on. So this is a basic uh, structure for my table. So let's see if it works. If I console log the output of this result, we'll see if table staff can get created in our database schema. So if I refresh, we'll see that something happened. How do I know if it worked or not? If I actually go into the server, I'll just take a peek here and do show tables. Tables. We should see table staff. So I do select star from table staff. Empty set. Okay, so we have no data right now. Now let's describe table. Describe table staff. It'll tell me that it created the exact table that we ordered. So it's done it phone and order, last name, ID, and a first name. And then it's got a primary key that's auto-generated with a UUID like we wanted. Now, if you forget something, the cool thing is like you can add to it later. So for example, if we forgot something like date hired, and then if I did like 2025 09 21, like give it a date, and then change the format so it's consistent with the others. So let's say, oh, I forgot date hire. If I just add it and then run it again, and we go back to the database on the server, you'll see that date hired got added at the end there, and it's a date time object. So it dynamically figured out like what the type was and created it. So now we might want to seed the database with some data. So we could just go for that I. So let's say I want to add more than 10. I'll add 21 records. So to do that, I just go let rs1 equals await, and then API.insert record. and then I want to go into the table staff table, and then this is kind of the slow way of doing it, but you can do a batch update too. But right now we'll just do it one at a time to get some data in the system. And what I want to do is just change the last name field to something random. So I'm going to go API dot. I think I've got, if I look at the structure, it tells me I got some random, there's a random function I can call, which is like, give me a random tracking number. So it just gives me kind of a random name. So I'll do that with the first name and last name. Okay, so that's all we need to do there. Then if I refresh the browser, we should, um, so you see how you can create, now you can insert the record. So if I refresh the browser, it's not a function of rent. Oh, I spelled it wrong. So let me do that again. Okay, try that again. Okay, there it goes. So it's outputting 21 instances. Now, if you go back on the server and do a select star from table staff, you'll see that we have the data populated with random first name, random last name. So we can just seed our database with random data. If you wanted to edit a record, a pre-existing record, I'm going to copy the ID of one of these records, and then back in here, if you wanted to edit that, so for just an element, I want to take the ID, set it equal to that pre-existing one, and then I can do a let rs edit. So wait, now I call API save record, and it'll do two things. One is if the record doesn't already exist, it will insert it, and if it does already exist, then it'll just edit it. So I'll do a save record. So we're going to set that ID, and then let's put in last name. We'll say like Mickey Mouse, since he's open source free now. He's been gone for 100 years, so anyone can use Mickey Mouse now. So then I just want to run that code. So actually, let me comment out adding these records. We don't get 42 records. Refresh it. You'll see something happen. If I go on the server, I'll select start. You'll see that we got Mickey Mouse in the database. So you can just play in JavaScript. You can build your whole data paradigm. You can build your whole application just on JavaScript. And let's delete Mickey Mouse now because it's just using him for testing. So I could do let rs delete equal await API dot delete record table staff, and then the same element. This time, first it'll edit it and then it'll delete it. So when I look at it, it shouldn't be there. So let me run it and see what happens. So if I refresh, something happened, go on to the server, and then you'll see Mickey Mouse is gone. Where'd he go? He's gone. So we can do what's called the CRUD operations. So that's an example of how you can create, read, update, and delete from a database directly using application programming interface endpoints. Uh, you can do everything in JavaScript, and we're just literally in an HTML file. So you could quickly mock up the requirements of what you need. You saw that was pretty quick. And then the next thing, what we're going to do in the next video, if you're staying tuned to the program, is then the challenge becomes I've got my data in JavaScript, and you just work on your controls and your user interface. So you can spend 95% of the development time not on the boring uh, back end, that nobody sees anyways. And you don't have to kind of like trust that your application is going to be following best practices and recommended security practices because it's already done. It's already doing that. So all you can then focus your development time on UI and UX design so you can make your customers happy. So in the next video, what we'll do then is look at how we can take that result set that we generate. Or I should show just before we go, one other call is, okay, so now you've got that data if you want to see it. So let rs get equal await API get data. You can make a call to that staff data, and then you can say, I want like just the top three records. Let's put Mickey Mouse back. So to do that, let's see if save record does an insert. I'm not sure if it does or not. We'll find out. You can specify a where clause. So we could search for Mickey Mouse if you wanted. Otherwise, you can order by something, but we'll just take the first three records that are in the table and see what happens. So actually, let me just take them all because I just want to see. And you'll get them back in the data parameter of the result set. So that's how you get your data back. If you output that, we'll see what happens. We'll see if Mickey Mouse gets put back. This time we don't have to go on the server all the time to see the data that's in there. We got the 21 records. There's Mickey Mouse, so it got added back. So it was good that I tested that because I wasn't sure how that worked. And then, yeah, and then you can filter and sort and then get specific amounts of data back. So for example, if we looked at that results set, we'll see Mickey Mouse is number one. So if I change it so I'm only getting like the top three and then rerun it, you'll see that we only get three. One of them is Mickey Mouse. Now, if I were to increment by one, so like I skip Mickey and go to the next and then refresh it, you'll see you'll still get three results, but now Mickey's not there. You just scroll down. So you can scroll through your data, sort it, filter it, and do everything through the application programming interface just by calling get data, your table name, and then skip and take the records that you want. There's a where clause you can add, and then you can order by and then put direction That's the order of the parameters for get data. And that's basically everything you need to do to interact with the application programming interface. And then once you have that, you can also use this then for other APIs. So if another API is following the same kind of paradigm, then you could potentially just set the parameters. But you're basically just making an AJAX call to get the data back. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the controls that we created in the previous video. And then we're just going to play around with binding data then to those controls, because the way we developed those controls was that we put them in the modules and we designed them specifically around JSON formats. So in the grid, we pass in uh, the data array, and then we dynamically sort through this array and then display it on the screen. So what we'll look at is what do our controls need then to be able to get rendered on the screen. Now, things got more complicated because I added other parameters like an options map to be able to map the names and specify an order. Because sometimes you get the columns, especially if you've been creating your database in different order, like we did, we added order afterwards. Uh, then I needed a way for the control to be able to manage the order of the headers that you want to display. And this way, if we use a separate kind of options JSON syntax, we can specify some of these options for how the data grid gets rendered. So we'll look at that in the next video. But for now, that's pretty cool. Like you saw, I just wanted to make a video about how easy it is to get up and running with this new system that I discovered. And you can use it then to code directly in JavaScript. And then you can do it one of two ways. One is you can develop your application from JSON, which is what I've been showing here. Or if you wanted, you could just take a forms-based approach and you could create your just normal HTML forms. So often that's what a user will give you when they're letting you know what they want in their application. And you could convert those forms from the HTML into JSON really easily. Just write a little bit of code that goes through the form and pulls out the information into JSON format. You can use jQuery for that. And then once you have it in JSON format, you can just um, build your database then from the JSON as you saw in this example today. So sometimes it's a little more complicated than just that because of the relationships that the forms um, don't overtly show sometimes. Like if you have drop down lists full of things, you need two tables. So you have to kind of figure out how you want to structure your data ultimately. But that shouldn't be too difficult, actually. And there's ways that you can kind of predict um, the relationships of the data anyways, so it's not that difficult. But we'll look then data binding in the next video. But for now, that's it. So you're well on your way on your first 20 minutes on the job to create your new staff module for managing, let's say, scheduling for your staff, for example. All right, thanks for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.